guys? Josh Pontius with Ella Armament here. I had a great friend, been a really close friend for just about all my life, reach out with a couple questions, all in relation to kids and firearms. When do we start to train them? When do you start to teach them? When do you get them acclimated? And the main one that I wanted to talk about tonight is concealment in the house. How do we keep firearms accessible but still safely secured and responsibly secured? I believe that there's two sides to this coin. My wife and I have really went through a lot of scenarios, really talked a lot about this. I would encourage you to do the same. I think the best thing is to just kind of work through it together. But we'll jump right into it. I have a ton of stuff to cover, so I'm gonna burn through this stuff pretty quick. Again, I think there's two sides to this coin. The first side I want to talk about is responsible storage. So what does the law say? The law in Ohio is that as the gun dealer, I have a responsibility that I need to make accessible to every customer a locking device that could render your weapons inoperable. This law hasn't always been this way. It's fairly new. It's kind of a bad shot, but that's a double coiled lock, so it ends up being about 15 inches long. I have a ton of these. Anybody that has a need, you feel like you have a firearm around and you want to lock it up until you can maybe come up with a better plan, or you just feel like you need some of those, shoot me a message. It's not a sales pitch. I won't charge you. I won't charge you shipping. I'd love to just help you out. But as the business, it's my obligation to make sure for every customer that buys a firearm from me, you have to have access to one of those. That's where the law stops. So as the customer, you have no legal obligation, and there's no dictation of what you need to do and how you need to safely secure your firearms. There was a House Bill 240 that they tried to push through in May of 19. It's gained no progress since then. It's still sitting on the shelf and it's gone nowhere. So just know, as of right now, as the customer, there's nothing in the law for Ohio only. So anyone that's out of state that would watch this, refer your law and at least know what your state would expect. There's obviously a lot of ways that you can lock up firearms. There's trigger guards. It's just a little mechanism you slide in the trigger guard. It's a lock and key. There's thumbprint lock boxes. I had a buddy that bought 2 of them and the thumbprint stopped working at some point. There's obviously gun safes. One of the ones that I think is what I would say is one of my most favorite is gun concealment furniture. They make like coffee tables. They do pictures on the wall. They do all kinds of stuff. LibertyHomeConcealment.com is one that I hear about a lot. I'm not affiliated with them. I know a couple customers that have bought their stuff and absolutely loved it. So what it boils down to, again, is just furniture. Has some type of locking mechanism. A lot of them are magnetic key cards, and you slide the key card over top of it. It unlocks and gives you access to a firearm that you have stored in there. I bought one. It wasn't through Liberty. The batteries died and there was no secondary feature to get the shelf unlocked. So I did have to break the shelf to get my pistol out. It was about a $200 shelf and about a $1,200 pistol. So for me, it was a no-brainer, but just a plug for anyone that does go that route, make sure that you buy one with a secondary feature to make sure that if the batteries ever die, you don't have to break your gear just to get your pistol or your weapon out. And what it all boils down to on this side of the coin is if a child gains access to your firearm, shoots somebody, causes significant damage or death, the owner of the firearm is going to be held accountable in court. There was a case not too long ago where this happened. A kid got access to a guy's gun. The child shot another person. They died. They were charged with manslaughter and child endangerment. So it could be as high as F1. So there's a lot of weight. There's a lot of responsibility. If you do own one, obviously your kids' lives could be in danger if they kill themselves with it or shoot a friend. There's tons of stories where it does happen. So we do have an obligation to make sure that your gear is safely secured and out of reach of minors, that they can't get access to it. The other side of the coin that I really want to talk about, not because it's more important than obviously the safety of our children, but I think it's a topic that's really minimized and not talked about enough, is accessibility. And I think a lot of people feel like the common sense answer is we'll just put them in a gun safe and lock them up. Unfortunately, I don't think that that's always just as easy of a solution as it seems, and I also don't always think that that's a wise option, to be honest with you. Personally, my wife, like I said, we've talked about this a ton. When we first started having kids, there was a lot of discussion about, do we leave them out? Where do we put them? The way that it ended up playing out is, I won't tell you the layout of my house or where they're at, but we have a gun in every room. We felt like it was best to just make sure that accessibility was at its highest. They are safely stored, and it's in a way that we feel like it's a fair balance. They are accessible but still safe, but we have a gun in every room. I didn't want anyone to be able to access my house unlawfully from any entrance, and to be able to beat me to my closest firearm. I don't want them to ever have a direct path where they can cut me off, and then now my gun's in another room. And no matter how many weapons you have, if they always say, like a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, a firearm in the hand is worth 80,000 in the safe. So it doesn't matter how many guns you have. If a burglar is able to come in and intercept your path between you and the closest firearm, it doesn't matter how many guns you have. At that point, you have zero, and you, at best, you're bringing a knife to a gunfight. So I'm a firm believer in they've got to be accessible. When I train, we a lot of times too will run pressure drills. A lot of times you just turn on the clock and find out how much pressure you get just by trying to race a clock or race a buddy. You start fumbling around, you're doing mag changes, you drop mags on the ground. When you feel a little bit of pressure, things just don't go well. So that's always my question for people that love lock and key. I'm not smashing them, I'm not saying don't use them. I'm just saying time yourself, put a little bit of pressure. Have somebody come in your door, a spouse walk through the back door while you rush to get your key and try to get to your firearm, and find out if you're able to be effective in that. Most of the time, the answer is you're not. You're not able to get to your set of keys, grab your key, unlock the door, grab your firearm, load a magazine, rack around, and then get back online where you can neutralize a threat before they would neutralize you. It's just, especially when there's pressure, especially when your heart's pounding, somebody just threw a brick through your back door, you're going to go into kind of panic mode, and when you start to panic, things just don't go as you plan. So run through those drills. If you are a lock and key type person, make sure that you're trying to do that under some pressure and find out if it's realistic for you. So why do you need to be so quick? I'll burn you some stats real quick. On average, there is a little over 2.5 million burglaries that occur each year, and over 66% of those are within the home. The average loss from a burglary, if there is no life, which obviously is the greatest loss, it monetarily comes out to $2,799. So people say, I can't afford a firearm. You can't afford to not have one, to be honest with you. The next stat, there's almost 3 burglaries every minute in the U.S. On average, they're about 22.6 seconds each, and they average out to be almost 3 burglaries per minute. They also say that the encounter from start to finish, from the time they breach your door until the time that they exit the premises, is usually under 8 minutes. There's been times where it's been seen that the individual can breach your door and enter the premises in under 1 second, and on average they say it takes about 6. So again, lock and key, thinking the amount of time it takes for you to gain access to that firearm, are you able to get online and get to a point where you can defend yourself and your family in under 6 seconds, because at that point you got a threat, you got a problem on your hands. So whatever method you use, just make sure that you're able to get to it fast, because it will need to be fast. It's literally a game of seconds, and we want to make sure that that's not a game we're losing. At the end of the day, what it all boils down to, and this is the last point here as I wrap it up, the main thing for us, us being my wife and I, what we thought was the best was education. I'm going to do another video about education. When do you start? The 5 main points of gun safety. I'll get into all that, but the main thing is that you have to educate. Your kids have to know firearms are off limits. You don't pick them up under any circumstance. I think a lot of it is balancing your approach off of their level of responsibility. And if they show that they just can't be trusted, and they're going to seek them out, they're going to be curious, they're going to start to look for them. We have drilled it into our kids, even with toys. You don't point guns at people. That's just not something we do. We buy targets with every gun that we've ever bought them, and we teach them that way, is you point guns at targets, not people. Because at 6 years old, you can't understand a threat at that point. You don't need to be worried about neutralizing threats. So I think it all starts with education. Drill that into them, make sure that they really understand that. I'm not going to tell you how to set up your house or how to be effective. I just wanted to make sure you understand both sides of the coin, and set you up for success to make the decision. So tune in. We'll have another video coming soon.